Welcome back to the Expressions of Destiny podcast, where faith, leadership, and purpose align. I'm Jen, and I'm really glad you're here. Over the past few weeks, we've been walking through a leadership conversation that's both personal and practical, one that asks us not just what we believe, but how we live it out. We've talked about what happens when truth enters the room. Then we explored the difference between feedback and fragility. Last week, we unpacked why resonance is not the same as agreement. And today, we're bringing all that together. Because at some point in every leadership journey, this moment arrives. Truth has been spoken, feedback has been offered, alignment or misalignment has been revealed. And then comes the moment that tells us everything. How do we respond? So today we're talking about how integrity is revealed in our response. Integrity isn't proven by what we say we value. It's revealed by how we respond when those values are tested. Anyone can speak about integrity in calm moments. Anyone can speak wise when things are easy. And anyone can talk about character when there's no pressure. But integrity shows up under strain. It shows up when we're misunderstood, we feel exposed, our leadership is questioned, our comfort is disrupted, our authority feels challenged. And these moments don't create integrity, they reveal it. Response tells the story our words can't. So let's talk about why response matters so much. Response is the moment where internal formation becomes external evidence. Let me say that again. Response is the moment where internal formation becomes external evidence. You can talk about humility, but response shows it. You can talk about growth, but response reveals it. You can talk about faith, but response exposes whether it's practiced or performative. And here's something we don't always say out loud. People don't experience our intentions. They experience our responses. So integrity is not measured by what we meant. It's measured by what people receive. So let's kind of take a moment to weigh the two different sides. We're going to talk about reaction versus response. And this distinction it's very critical. Reaction is immediate and emotional. Think about that. Response is intentional and grounded. Reaction is driven by fear, ego, or urgency. A response is shaped by wisdom, discernment, and self-control. Reaction defends, but response reflects. Reaction seeks control. Response seeks understanding. Reaction escalates. Response steadies. And one of the most important leadership skills you can develop, especially as a faith-centered leader, is learning the difference between the two. And so I want to share a little story here. I know I've shared it before on other episodes when it comes to customer service and how we treat people, but this is just such a perfect example of how we can really see within ourselves. Do we react a lot of times, or have we learned how to respond? Responding simply is just taking time to listen. And so two different scenarios. I'll share the short versions. But when I used to work for a grocery store, a big corporate grocery chain, and it was my job to serve the customers. It was my job to deliver their groceries out to their vehicles. We all know the curbside pickup now that everybody does. And this was several years back, but I remember that every time a customer would be upset, they would react. They would be angry because their groceries were late, or because someone forgot about them, or maybe they just didn't want to have to stop and pick them up, and so they took it out on the employees. And I remember a lot of the young people coming out and coming back into the building after interacting with that customer and being very irritated, upset, angry sometimes because the customer had yelled at them, cussed at them, tell them they were worthless, they needed to hurry up, they were wasting their time, whatever the comment may have been. And I could tell that deeply hurt the employee. But at the same time, we have to remember that it is our position at that job to serve the customer. And whether the customer was being ugly or not, whether they were reacting, it was still our job to respond, and to respond with grace, because we didn't know what that person was going through. Did we deserve to be spoken to that way? No. But at the same time, the customer was not angry at us. We just happened to be their target. And a lot of times when I took the time to talk to them or just to listen to them, I learned that it was just that they were upset about having to come and pick up the groceries. Maybe somebody else was supposed to do it and they sent their spouse to do it, or a teenager or a young adult child. It was always some type of scenario. Maybe they had a hard day at work and they were just tired and they were in a hurry and they wanted to get home. We just happened to be their target. They were already upset. And because things were not going as they expected, their reaction came out, and our reaction, or I should say the majority of the younger generation that was working at this grocery store, they would react back. Well, I don't have to put up with this. You don't need to be talking to me that way. There was always some type of argument that happened. They would come in and they would refuse to go back out to deliver the groceries. And so one of the other employees would have to do it. And so I had my fair share of those types of encounters where customers would react. And I had people cuss me out up and down all over the place. And I hadn't even done anything except said, I apologize that your groceries have been delayed. Let me go ahead and hurry up and get that to you. And they would still cuss me out. Now, the difference was that I wasn't reacting back to them. I was responding with grace, responding by listening, and responding by apologizing, sincerely apologizing. Look, I understand you're upset. I apologize for, the inconvenience and for the long wait. It's been very busy today, but let me go ahead and hurry up and get that out for you. And I'll get it as quickly as I can. And by responding in that way, pretty much every customer that I ever had that was irate and angry and frustrated always ended on a kind interaction. It always ended with some type of apology that really wasn't necessary, because I understood they were going through something beyond me. I hadn't even done anything yet to make them angry. But just the response that came after the fact. Once I brought the groceries out, they were always so kind. They would always say something like, you know what, I'm so sorry for yelling at you. I apologize for being so rude. I've just had a really rough day. That's when the truth would come out, because we gave it time to be able to actually interact and see what was going on. Did they owe me that information? No. It's fine. I would have still done what I always do. But because I understood, okay, sometimes people just have to get it out too, I would stand there and I would listen, regardless of how busy it was. If it was extremely busy, I would tell the rest of my coworkers, please, jump out here, start taking care of the other cars. I need to make sure this customer is taken care of. We don't know what that individual is going through. We don't know what could happen after they leave our presence. We have no idea. And so if we escalate the situation by reacting back, there may be an even greater, I don't even want to think this way, but even a greater horrible thing that could happen in their journey home than de-escalating and calming them down. Because what if that customer was so angry and upset, and now I've just thrown, fuel on the fire, and they speed out of there. They're driving down the highway at high speeds because they're already tired. They're in a hurry. They're frustrated. They just had an argument with a person they don't even know. They're distracted, and then they get into an accident. Or something else happens. They get stopped, for speeding. Whatever the case may be, the road rage, because they're already in a rage. What if something like that were to happen and I wasn't there to be able to step in and help de-escalate that just by caring, just by learning to respond instead of get offended by what is happening. And so these are some of those situations where we can actually change that situation. We can change that atmosphere. We can help that individual. If we just get outside of ourselves and quit worrying about what someone else is doing to us, did it really hurt? Maybe for a moment we're like, hey, you have no right to talk to me like that. I don't even know you. But at the same time, did it hurt us emotionally? Did it hurt us to the point where, we just can't function and operate the rest of the day? Wouldn't it feel better if we were able to kind of turn that situation for the good? And so I carry this same thing into the same idea into my everyday. Now I work day after day with young people, specifically teenagers, that 14 to 18 year age. And, and we have teenage daughters that are 19. And so it's kind of that sweet age where you're able to really be a good influence on these young people, on these individuals. And so in the same way, when I'm with them day after day, I'm able to really exercise this react versus response, especially because, like, once again, young people, they're so quick to react to things. They're so quick to get offended or to feel like someone is attacking them, but we don't know what they've been through in their life. We don't know what's going on, in their home situation. We don't know what's going on in their friend situation. We don't know things that have happened to them in their past, if they've been abused, whatever the situation may be, we have no idea what they're going through. And so I've learned that when they're looking upset and frustrated, they look angry, someone is bothering them, it is so much easier for me to stop and just listen, to approach them and say, hey, are you okay? Is everything good? Are you doing all right? And allowing them to just respond in a better way. I'm fine. It's okay. I'm just tired. I may even go up to them and say, are you tired today? You look a little tired. And that may be the response. Yeah, miss, I was up all night. I had to work, or I had to do this, or, I had to help my mom with whatever. We just don't know until we take the time to listen to them. And many times I've been able to bring them back to a place of focus, to start looking at, what it is that they're doing and they're working on, so that now their mind is back on what is most important. They're not being weighed down by everything that is going on in their life, but they've had an interaction with somebody who actually cares enough to listen to them so they can get it out, so they can get back on track with whatever it is that needs to be completed for that day. And so we look at how important this reaction versus response is in everyday life, in every individual that we meet. Why are we not taking a moment to just pause? And we're going to learn more about that here just in a moment, but to just pause and listen. Take the time to really look at the whole situation, really think about it before we just react out of whatever emotion it is that is building up inside of us. And so again, I just want to repeat this from what we were talking about before, is that this is one of the most important leadership skills that you can develop, especially as a faith-centered leader, is learning the difference between the two, between reaction versus response. Now let's talk about the power of the pause. And this is what we were leading into. Faith-centered leadership teaches us that wisdom often lives in the pause. The pause before we speak, the pause before we respond, the pause where we check our motives, our tone, and even our posture. Pausing doesn't mean avoidance. It doesn't mean weakness. I need you to hear that. Pausing does not mean that you are weak or you're having a weak moment. It doesn't mean silence for the sake of peacekeeping, trying to make sure that things don't get out of hand, too out of control where you can't control the situation. It means that we're choosing discernment over defensiveness. We have to stop getting so defensive. And leaders who pause lead environments where people feel safe to be honest. We've talked about in these past several weeks, being in a place a job, a position, a ministry, a family setting, doesn't matter. Every area of your life, it's being in a place where you feel safe enough to just be honest. Wouldn't we want everybody to be honest with us? Sometimes we're so concerned about how much that honesty is going to hurt, and that's why we get offended. That's why we get defensive. But if everybody could just be honest, it's like if I were to go to my husband and say, actually, I did this a couple of days ago. I said, baby, does this shirt look like a maternity shirt? Because I don't want to walk up out of here looking like I'm wearing maternity clothes and there's no baby in this belly. It's knowing that I know he's going to be honest with me. He's going to either say, no, it looks great, it's fine, I can't even tell. Or he's going to say, yeah, it kind of does. And he did. He said, yeah, it does kind of look like that because of the way it was cut, because of the way that it was made. It wasn't a maternity shirt, but it just looked like it. And so it helped me to determine whether, and myself, I needed to go change that blouse before I left the house. But I knew he was going to be honest with me. And so wouldn't we want everybody to feel safe being honest with us to the point where they know we're not going to get defensive and we're not going to just blow up in the moment? So with that, let's talk about why response matters more than intent. Here's the hard truth about that, but it's definitely a necessary one. Good intentions don't cancel out poor responses. And let me say that again. Good intentions don't cancel out poor responses. You may have meant well. You may have had the right heart. You may have been tired, stressed, or even under pressure. But if your response caused fear, harm, shutdown, or even silence, integrity still invites reflection. Integrity still invites reflection. Mature leaders are willing to say things like, I need to revisit that. Or, you know what, I didn't handle that very well. Or they may even say, let me listen again. That willingness is not weakness. You are not weak for wanting to stop and give yourself an opportunity to respond better. That's integrity at work. Because integrity isn't about being flawless. It's about being teachable. And so here's where we get to jump in and talk about one of my favorite fruits of the Spirit. When we dive into the Word of God, we think about all of the fruits of the Spirit that are there. There's one that is not very easy a lot of times, and that's self-control. So I want to talk a little bit about faith and self-control. We know that Scripture speaks often about self-control, patience, and wisdom in speech and the things that we say, right? Faith invites us to be slow to speak and quick to listen, not because silence is safer, but because discernment is deeper. Discernment is so much more important. Self-control is not suppression. It's stewardship. It's stewarding our words and our thoughts and our actions in the right way. It's going back to the Word of God and saying, how would Jesus respond to this? How are we to respond? When integrity leads, response is measured. It doesn't rush to justify things. It doesn't escalate to protect ego. All right, we have a lot of that going on today in this world, in the business world, in life in general. And it doesn't punish vulnerability. That's very important. Integrity responds with humility. It's having a caring heart for other people. It's just having grace and love for one another. And humility is not thinking less of yourself. It's thinking honestly just about your impact. The impact that you have on individuals that are close to you, the impact you have on total strangers. We can make a difference in the life of someone that doesn't know anything about us, has nothing to do with our everyday life, is an absolute total stranger. We can still make a difference in their life. We can still make an impact, a great impact. Let that set in for a minute. That is so important for us to remember. So right now I want to talk to the leader who's under pressure. This is specifically for those of y'all that are in a leadership role and you just feel that pressure. You feel like you are pressed under the pressure of everything. If you're listening right now and you feel that weight of leadership, I want you to hear this clearly. Pressure doesn't create integrity. It reveals it. The moments that stretch you are shaping you. The conversations that test you are forming you. And the responses you choose today become the culture you lead tomorrow. And this is where faith matters most, not in what we say publicly, but in how we respond privately and consistently. It doesn't always have to be out loud, doesn't have to be sitting on a shelf for everybody to see, but it's how we respond privately and consistently. Consistency is important. And then for the listener who has been hurt by poor responses, this is where I want to talk to you. I also want to pause and acknowledge those of you who've been on the receiving end of reactive leadership. If someone's response shut you down, if your honesty was met with defensiveness, if integrity was claimed but not practiced, that's important. I want you to hear this. That pain was not imagined, okay? I know it hurts. Your experience mattered. Integrity isn't just personal, it's relational. And when responses lack care, and they lack humility or accountability, trust diminishes. It goes away very quickly. If that's part of your story, you're not alone. And your discernment was very valid. Of all people, I can understand. I share these things and I speak from a place of experience, a place of having seen it in other people's lives, having seen so many other people go through the same things that we're talking about here, including myself. Having been in positions where I stood there quietly, trying to be a leader, trying to do the right thing, and still experiencing a lot of this from the leaders that were over me. And so I speak to you from experience. Don't feel like you're alone. But I also know that there's a greater side. We don't always stay in these situations. We don't always have to endure the same thing over and over and over again. This is where truth enters the room, right? We're going back to that very first week where we talked about that. So in saying that, let's bring it all together. I want to connect the dots of this series because we're not done with it. There's at least another week or two left that we're going to continue to speak on leadership. So when we go back to what we've already learned, week 1, 2, and 3, and now we're on week 4. Truth enters the room. Feedback is offered. Resonance reveals alignment. And integrity is revealed in the response. And these are the 4 weeks that we've covered. Leadership rooted in faith doesn't aim for perfection. It aims for growth, humility, and wisdom. Very important. And integrity is the thread that holds it all together. Integrity is so important, you guys. Integrity shows the heart of the individual in everything. So I also want to say this before we close out today, because this is just a thought that came to my mind. But even when we are in situations where reaction is what is being thrown at us, we can still be the one who stops with a moment to pause and an opportunity to respond. Because even though it may be leadership that is over us, even though it may be a situation where we are a leader and we have other leadership over us, everybody's in the same situation, right? We all have someone who is leading above and in charge, unless you are at the very top. But even in those situations, the way that we respond can really reshape and change another leader's life. It can really show them or show them the better way of doing things, but also make them stop and think, wow, I don't do that enough. Or I wonder why they responded that way. I wonder why they, are so patient with these other individuals. There's so many different things, so many different avenues we can go down, right? So many streets. But it's just knowing that we still have, even though reaction is happening all around us, we still have the great opportunity to pause and to respond with love and care, sincere, a sincereness in our heart to show that, hey, I understand. It might be a hard day today. You didn't have to react that way, but this is how I choose to respond to you because I truly do care, whatever it is that you're going through, or whatever it is that you've learned. Sometimes it's just a learned habit. We've been taught a certain way, and that's how we do it, but we don't realize that what we're doing is hurting the other people that are there to serve with us. So I just wanted to add that in there as it came to mind. What a great opportunity we have every day to be the response that is needed and necessary. So in closing, I just want to encourage you, as you move through this week, I want to encourage you to gently observe your responses. Not to judge yourself, but to grow. Ask God to steady your heart. Ask Him to guide your words. That is so important. Ask Him to help you respond with grace, even when it's uncomfortable. Because integrity is not proven in comfort. It's revealed in response. I want you to hear that again. Integrity is not proven in comfort. It's going to get uncomfortable sometimes, y'all. But it's revealed in our response. So thank you for spending this time with me on the Expressions of Destiny podcast. And if this episode resonated with you, feel free to share it with someone who may need it. And be sure to subscribe so you don't miss what's coming next. We got a couple more weeks in this series, so you don't want to miss it. If you've missed part 1 through 3, go back and listen to them. So until next time, keep living with intention, leading with faith, and walking boldly in your purpose. God bless.